Alrighty, folks. That was Kill the Joke. And Corolla, thank you so much for Muppets Racing. I've been told we're ready for the charity interview, so let's find out more about QMUNITY. Take it away.
All right, everyone, we should be live here. Hello, everyone. I'm George here. I'm the main organizer for this event here, and I'm joined here by, if I'm pointing at the right direction, oh, that's the right direction, I think. Hopefully, we are joined here by Michael Robach, the, I believe, communications lead and not fundraising lead? You know, that's a question for later. I think communications lead, but hey, you can correct me on that later. From QMUNITY, I am so stoked that we're going to be having this interview with you. So, Michael, first of all, I guess, yeah, since I already talked about it, what is kind of like your role in the organization?
Yeah, amazing. I'm so pumped to be here. Thanks so much for having us. Here, I'll grab my little community cup just so I can be like
Oh my god, I need to buy one of these.
Yeah. I'm Michael. I use he, him pronouns. I'm actually Director of Development, so I oversee communications, education, and fundraising at Q. We call it Q sometimes, just colloquially, but it's QMUNITY is the name. And I get to do the fun task of sort of going out into the community and talking about the programs and services and the work that gets done within the organization, as well as educating folks around some of the issues that people face when they come through our door and why it is that they even come to Q for help. So it's good work, and I'm excited to be here and talk about it today.
Yeah, it's amazing hearing about like how big the organization is, QMUNITY, and what we're fundraising for. But just we've had our host talk about QMUNITY, but like just kind of like in your own words, what is like the specific goals that QMUNITY wants to achieve in British Columbia?
Oh man, that's a big question. I mean, QMUNITY as an organization has existed for almost 45 years now. We're the oldest queer organization in Canada, in North America, and it's over the years, we've grown and grown. We really started at the hands of our own community, and the scope of what we do now has increased to the point where we're supporting about 35,000 people who are queer, trans, two-spirit to access resources, information, community, and there's kind of a breadth to what we do. So the core sort of programming that we deliver is youth programs and senior programs. The youth programs particularly, are sort of very catered to. We have the Gab Junior, which is, I think, 10 to 14, and then we provide support to 14 to 25. And it's really centered on peer support, one-on-one counseling, and providing drop-in spaces for kids to be able to hang out, play video games, play board games, make art, and like be together in a space. We talk about it oftentimes in these three fears where it's scary to be queer or trans because coming out is really difficult. You don't know how people are going to react, if you're going to be accepted by your peers, if your family is going to accept you. It's also scary because it's isolating, right? Like, especially in smaller communities, like all around the province, you come out and there might not be asexual people around you that you can relate to. And so it becomes really lonely. But then there's this third fear that we talk about often, which is you have these insecurities about yourselves. And the way the human brain is wired is that because we're insecure, we look for signals around us that validate those insecurities. And when you're queer, when you belong to this community, there are so many signals in the media, in the way that people talk about people who are LGBTQ, that validate these insecurities. And you end up in this dangerous place where you start to believe it, right? You start to think, there's something wrong with me. There's something that I need to correct here, which is so far from the truth. And so much of what we do here at QMUNITY is for people to see that they're beautiful and they're perfectly natural just as they are. And there's a whole community of people here that identifies the same as they do, that have navigated the same things that they have. And so we, as a hub, as a center, we try and provide spaces for people to find connection in that way. So the seniors program is the flip side to the youth program. And it's kind of my favorite because, seniors, they don't necessarily have traditional families to take care of them, same as others. So they don't have kids, for instance, and things like that. And yet they deserve to feel celebrated. They deserve to feel seen just the same as anyone else. So we organize events for our seniors, for our queer seniors to be seen and celebrated. We have specific programs and counselors in particular to help seniors who face elder abuse in homes, seniors that are transitioning later in life because now they live in a world where being trans there's more opportunities for transition and for mental health support. And so we're able to sort of support them in that way. Other programs we run is our employment program, where we help folks overcome barriers to employment. And we have case managers that are able to like spend 10 weeks with someone to help them figure out what they want to do, brush off on their resume skills, and also identify like what are the barriers as a queer person that you're facing in the workplace. We have a volunteer program. We have a free counseling program, which is incredible because we have counselors with lived experience. If you need counseling, speaking to someone who's trans, for instance, and understands what transitioning looks like, it can completely alter your mental health experience. We have peer groups. We have over 19 different peer groups all across the province, specific to sub sort of communities. Like we have our aromantic group, we have our Queer Loving Color, we have Dear John, I Love Jane, which is a group specific to women who used to be in relationships with men, but then realized that they were lesbian, and so now they go for brunch on Sundays. Like there's so many spaces like that for queer people to feel celebrated. And so to go back to your original question, a little bit of like, what's our goal? Our goal is to have our doors open to anyone within the community that needs help, that needs connection, and that needs resources. And this past year has been particularly hard for people in the community, and our ability to meet demand and continue to sort of rise to that demand has been our biggest priority and our biggest goal. Because, you know, organizations like ours need to exist so that people aren't left to their own device and they're not left sitting alone thinking that there's something wrong with them, you know? And so that's kind of like, I'm talking a lot, but that's kind of the goal and the objective for how we run the organization. Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally fine to talk a lot. Don't worry. I mean, that's we gave you 20 minutes here to talk about your amazing
There you go.
organization and stream. So, and honestly, if we have more stuff to talk about, I'm totally fine overrunning those 20 minutes.
Amazing.
Like, if we sit here talking for 30 minutes, if that's cool with you. It's an amazing
Thank you.
organization. I saw your eyes like light up when you talked about the seniors program. I wanted to ask you specifically, like, how do you yeah, exactly. That program about the seniors program, they might be facing like specific key challenges. You already talked about stuff like they might not have family, for
Yeah.
example, to like fall back on. Are there like any other key challenges that face older adults and seniors in the Two-Spirit and LGBTQIA community?
Yeah. Seniors, regardless of what identity they intersect with, seniors have a hard time of it because they're oftentimes invisible. You know, in all societies and in all communities, seniors don't have the benefit of visibility. They oftentimes earn less, or they're sort of surviving on retirement funds, whichever way they're able to set it up. And when you're queer, it just adds that extra level of barrier where you are more isolated, you are more disconnected from community and peers, and you don't have those traditional systems like family and things like that to help support you. And so, yeah, they have unique challenges. One of the things that we see a lot is, so retirement homes, older living spaces, oftentimes you'll have individuals in those spaces that aren't progressive enough to understand things like pronouns or things like understanding what it means to be queer. Because today, especially the younger generation, they understand these things so much better than we have in a long time. But so these seniors are faced still with a lot of homophobia, a lot of transphobia, and they're not provided with tools to help navigate that, because for them it's this whole new chapter of life where you don't get a guidebook. There's no resource for that. Really interesting fact: in the last 24 months, QMUNITY has seen a rise, an increase of 300%, and that's wild, I know. Statistically, big numbers like that are scary, but 300% increase in the number of seniors that are transitioning, that are coming out as trans, and that are getting onto, they're doing medical transitioning, they're doing external social transition, because they've lived their entire lives not knowing what it means to transition, not having the language or the support to be able to come out as trans. And now all of a sudden they live in a world where they can. And that's such an amazing thing. And it's also heartbreaking in a way to think that people have gone so long unable to be themselves, unable to feel comfortable in their own skin and safe in their ability to come out. And so we have this program at Q that started last year. It's called the Indigo Survivors Project. And it's basically a circle space where we invite seniors to come in and talk about past trauma, talk about transition, have access to a counselor if they're experiencing harm in spaces that they access, like retirement homes, things like that. And so we're providing them with language, we're providing them with a safe space to connect with each other. And I think the reason I get so fired up talking about the seniors is because it's elders, it's people who hold all this knowledge of like back in the day when they would paint posters and they would march during the Pride Parade. And the Pride Parade today is this big party, it's this big celebration, but it wasn't 20, 30, 40 years ago. 40 years ago, when you were queer and you marched in a Pride Parade, you were risking your life. You were risking getting arrested by police. You were risking experiencing violence and harm from people that weren't supportive of the community. But they still did it. They still went onto the streets. And maybe not for themselves, but for us, this new generation that now gets to benefit off their work. And I find it so like shattering to see seniors that are now struggling, that are now in a position where they don't have enough resources, they don't have enough support. Another program that we run here at Q is our food security program. So 2 years ago, the seniors coordinator realized that when we host events, we do Aging with Pride. It's like a Pride event for seniors. We put spreads out with like cookies and brownies and sandwiches, what have you. And we noticed that some seniors was sort of taking a napkin and wrapping sandwiches up and putting it in their bags so they could eat it later. And we sort of thought, like, why are they doing that? Like, what's going on? And we did a little bit more digging, and we realized a lot of the seniors face food insecurity. It seems so basic. It's this basic human need that we have to eat. And so this started the food security program at Q, where now we provide vouchers for groceries. So that some seniors, so we have, I think, a group of 12 seniors that access the program. Every month they come by, we give them a gift card so they can go to the supermarket and get basic groceries. And it's like little things like that that we just forget or we don't think about. And providing them the food security sort of gift cards, it's an honored way for us to be able to remove the need for them to like steal food or like sort of shove it into their bag in secret. We want them to feel seen. We want them to feel celebrated. And I want to mention, because this is the context of fundraising, the food security program is completely unfunded. There is $0 provided through grants, through government, through nothing. And so every single dollar that we raise, every single dollar that individuals donate goes straight into that program. For like, there's lots of little pockets that we fill, but it's tangibly speaking, things like this, like what you're putting on today, and every donation that we're receiving, thanks to you, it's very tangibly going into programs and services to make sure that we have food vouchers for our seniors, that we have art supplies so that the kids have something to do when they come in. And yes, our spaces will always be open to the best of our ability, but every time we're able to fundraise to help support them and meet the needs that they have, it completely changes someone's life, right? It's something it's so tangible and it's so immediate, and anyway. I could talk about seniors all day, I will say, and it's one of the programs that's really close to my heart because it doesn't get enough visibility, and it's a program that I'm so proud of here at Q. It's been really central to our organization for a long time. It's a network of individuals all throughout BC, and it's a really, really special program that we run.
I mean, there's just so many things I'd love to like follow up questions. There's so many programs that Q helps at the food situation, especially. I cannot believe there are zero government grants for that, especially for a community that, as you said, would be. There's lots of sub issues that come, for example, with being queer or trans, right? For example, being kicked out by family, right? And so these little programs, obviously, I never considered that, but yeah, that's a valid point, right? If you're queer and trans or two-spirit, right, and you get kicked out by your family for that, right? You need some
Yeah.
support to get back on the ground.
Yeah, and it surprises people because I want to go back to the youth program. There's approximately 75 youth that access one of the drop-ins at one of the spaces. About 10% of them, and this is in Canada, here in BC, here in Vancouver, we have youth under the age of 18 that have been kicked out from home and that live in shelters and that face housing insecurity, food insecurity. And when they come to Q, because we're not a social service delivery organization, there's only a certain degree to which we're able to help support someone. So we triangulate with other organizations that offer housing, for instance. But when the kids come in, they get to be themselves, they get to be safe, and they get to interact with other kids who share the same identity as them. And I also want to mention gaming, and so video games, board games, is something that is so treasured within the youth drop-ins because it's a moment where they get to step into someone else's foot. They get to enjoy the journey of going on an adventure with someone, and it's this really, really wonderful intersection of worlds. We partner with this community, this sub-community, the furries, if you will. And I know the furries sort of branches into all different types of subgroups. But the furries is one of the outlets that the youth love because it's like you get to put on a suit, you get to really sort of be with your peers. And it's a really wonderful sort of initiative that we run. So yeah.
Yeah, lots of stuff, happening within Q. It is. I honestly I looked about like everything happening on the website and was like, I thought I'd come here prepared for this interview, and you just like blew my mind. That is amazing. We've been talking so much about positive stuff, so I wanted to ask you, between like all of the amazing, things that you've probably experienced as in your leading role at Community, what has been like your most favorite like individual success story within Community,
Oof,
within Q?
oof. There's so many things. And I mean, it sounds wild because as much as we run a pretty tight ship, it's a small team of people with a huge amount of volunteers that help make it all possible, and it's hard to sort of pinpoint one initiative that feels extra special. But well, one of the things that we run is around trans affirming programs, so programs that help support folks that are trans or two-spirit or gender diverse, in fact. One of them is our BBB, so that's bras, binders, and breast forms. And so this is one of the things with youth where you are young, you want to transition, maybe you're underage and you're not able to sort of explore HRT or medical transition just yet. And so one of the things that often happens is you'll use things like binders where you can bind your chest so as to sort of reduce your chest size. And it can be quite dangerous and you can get cut marks and it's unhealthy and dangerous. And so we offer completely free garments. And so it's like specialty binders, specialty breast forms, and things for youth to be able to wear to affirm their gender without doing anything that's dangerous. And I remember I was in the office one day and we had a youth that came in, and I happened to be on site that day, but they came in with their parent and they were like, hey, I heard that this is something you offer for free. Is it okay if I try something on? And so I'm not programmed, so I never get to engage with youth in that way. But that day I was here, so I was like, yeah, come with me. I'll help you out. What's your size? Went and grabbed a binder and was able to bring it out. And the youth went into the changing room, put on the binder. I was sitting with their parents. They were both so nervous. I feel like they were both sort of exploring something that was so new. And the youth came out crying. Like for the first time in their life, they were looking in the mirror and they felt the way they saw themselves is how they felt. And it was this moment, we talk a lot about like gender euphoria, this euphoric moment of being validated in like, this is who I am. I've never had the opportunity to see myself the way I am, but this is who I am. And something so simple as like a binder, just to me, I'd never seen that before. And so to me, it took me by surprise. And to see them cry and to see them come out feeling so affirmed, and their parents were so excited to just see their kid so happy. And that really locked it in for me. Like there's so many little things that we're able to do that help change life, like help really inform someone about they're valid, that they're safe, that they have options before them to affirm who they are and their safety around that. So if I had to think of like a specific project or moment or something that I'm really proud of in terms of the organization and the work I've done here, even just that moment, I could have quit that day and I would have been like, I'm happy. I feel like I've done good work at Q. So that was really special.
Oh my god, you couldn't see it because like when you had talked, right, we put you on full screen, right, you couldn't see it, but like I actually started crying a bit in the middle of that story too. That is beautiful. Like
Yeah.
letting especially kids, but like any person out who they are to be, that is amazing. Obviously in that example, their parents came in, right, being supportive, all of that, right? sometimes kids don't have that luxury, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes kids don't have supportive parents, right? So I believe you do counseling services as well, right? Does that, for example, extend to parents who say don't know anything about, queer or trans lives and
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
understand it further?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to parents and family members, it's a huge priority for us, right? Because, and speaking to the youth team, when dealing with youth in particular, there's some degree of work that we can do with kids themselves, but they need a strong support system. And so identifying who the caregiver is, who's the parent, who's the caregiver, who's someone around them that can advocate for them is super, super important. And we have a bunch of resources for parents specifically. The journey that parents go on is your kid might come out, oh, mom, dad, I'm bisexual, or mom, dad, I'm trans. And the first reaction that we often see in parents is fear, right? It's like the fear of, oh no, my kid is going to have a really tough life, or for a lot of parents, HIV is the thing that comes to mind because they associate it with the queer community, and so they panic. And for the kids, sometimes that can translate into rejection. It can hurt, right? It's like you feel rejected by your family. And so in those situations, most often what we find is that parents reach out literally just because they need information. They're like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing here. My kid just came out to me. Like, are there some resources I can access? So for parents specifically, we offer peer groups. So there's Parents of Trans Kids is a group that meets every month, I think twice a month or maybe once. And it's a safe space for parents to meet other parents who've gone through this journey. And the thing that's great about the group is that they'll get to talk to people who've been through it, right? If you're a parent and you join this group, it's online usually, they're able to talk to someone that's like, hey, I know exactly how you feel because I've been there with my kid. So any question you have, tell me and I will answer. And if you need anything, we can help support. And so connecting parents to parents is super important because it provides an opportunity for peer sort of resources. The second thing we do is we have like toolkits, information, some definitions so they can understand the scope of what these identities mean and what it is, and that it's not scary at all, and that it's actually wonderful. Um, like one thing that we always remind parents, right? It's that if your kid came out to you, that means that there's trust there, right? Like they love you enough that they want you to know who they are, exactly who they are. And there's something really beautiful and sacred, and it's an opportunity for you to like open up yourself to get to know your kid, right? Like get to know them as who they actually are. Some parents never have that luxury. Some parents will never find out who their kids really are because they'll grow up and they'll come out later, and then they'll miss out on the opportunity to be a part of that journey and to support their kids. Around counseling specifically, so we provide two types of counseling. There's free counseling, that's you get 10 sessions with a clinically supervised counselor that's able to help you navigate sexual orientation, gender identity, transition, all of that stuff. And then we have low cost counseling. And so low cost works on a scale where you basically pay what you can afford in order to access the counseling quicker. Because as you can imagine, the free counseling that we offer, it has limited capacity and huge demand. And so there's oftentimes a wait time in order to access it. Whereas if you're able to pay a little bit, then you can get funneled to a counselor much quicker. There's a youth stream specifically. It gets a bit complicated, but youth get access to counseling faster than anyone else because we want to make sure that they get access to it first. Yeah, that's kind of a little bit. The other thing I'll say about the counseling program, starting last year, we now do HRT assessments. And if anyone who's trans hears that, you'll probably understand it better, but getting assessed on whether or not you can start hormonal replacement therapy, it's a very rigorous process. They make it really tough. You have to sort of navigate the system. And sometimes you have to wait a really long time before you can start treatment. But at Q, the counselors are actually able to make an assessment right on the spot. So they can actually have a chat with you and be like, hey, I'm going to approve you for HRT replacement therapy. Hormone replacement therapy. And for trans people, it's life-saving, right? Like being able to start a transition, being able to start being affirmed in your gender, it's something that should be much more accessible. Unfortunately, it isn't, but it's one of the ways in which we're able to help support people on that journey.
How do you go through that process of like qualifying to actually be like able to legally make that assessment? Because like I was of the belief that like okay, I had this like same thing going into this, right? If you're trans, right, you have to go to a doctor, and it's this rigorous process of like, oh, you get rejected 10 times only to like try and find, like I've heard this before, right? Try and find a doctor that will approve you for it, right? So do you have like a medical division within Q as well?
So it's the HRT assessment is not medical in nature, and
Oh,
the system is flawed, and honestly, the way that assessments are done should be much more streamlined. The assessment is an outdated transphobic practice of checking if the person is mentally sound in wanting to transition. It's basically you need a medical professional to look at you and say like, are you sure? Are you sure that this is what you want? They'll ask you a series of questions around your mental health and whether or not you're valid in wanting to have this. And saying this out loud feels really gross to me because it's, you know, someone's gender is something that they are empowered to sort of tell you, right? Like people feel affirmed in their own gender because it's who they are, it's what they know. And so for a medical professional to somehow they did a master's degree and now for some reason they know your gender better than you is silly. So within community, we don't have a medical sort of structure, but the counselors that deliver counseling are clinically supervised by someone that has the medical background to be able to validate these things. And so that's the way that we've been able to streamline a mental health HRT assessment. I'm gonna stop with that there, just because it's now we're getting into the intricacies of what the assessment looks like in detail,
yeah.
and I couldn't answer that. I know that someone who's probably gone through it could speak to it much better than I can, and it's almost something I would want the counselors to speak to. Yeah.
Yeah, that is completely fair. But I didn't even know that it was like transphobic in nature, like by default. So you learn something new every day. Hey, education, live on stream here.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
There you
I
go.
mean, I could talk all day about the transphobic structures that exist in the world. I mean,
It's a
there's this,
thing.
it's wild, but one of the things we do in our education program is we talk about queer history a lot, and I am dumbfounded at how far back queer, trans, non-binary identities have existed. I mean, if you look in the history books past colonialism, trans and queer and two-spirit people have not only existed for since the beginning of
Oh
time,
yeah.
since the beginning of people, they were revered. And like so here in Canada, we talk a lot about two-spirit people in indigenous communities, and they in sort of if you look back at indigenous knowledge and ways of knowing, they were healers, they were mediators, they were these people that very uniquely sat between spirit worlds that engaged in same-sex relationships and were revered and celebrated for it, even in Germany. So in Germany, back in, I'd have to check my notes here. I think it was not even that long ago.
In 1990, I live in Germany in the 90s. Yeah. Up until the 90s, it was used as a slur for trans people in Germany. The its
Uh,
pronoun. Yeah.
yeah.
That's
But if you go way back in history, I mean, and I do mean like a thousand, no, maybe not 1,000 years, but like hundreds and hundreds of years, they were trans individuals that existed in society and did not face violence or hatred or anything like that. It was colonialism in its finest form that erased a lot of indigenous ways of knowing around these identities. And so the transphobic practices around gender only really started in like the 1600s, if you will. And now we live in a society where you're born, the doctor looks at you and says, okay, you're a boy, and then you're put into this box. The way that people talk to you in the hospital as a baby, you could look at research on this, right? Like if you're wearing a little pink hat versus a blue hat, the doctors will speak to the baby in a different voice. And from then onwards, the entire world you live in is catered to this very binary understanding of washrooms. There's men and women washrooms. There's societal expectations about what jobs you can do. People speak to you in a different way if you're a boy or if you're a girl. The world is not designed for people that are trans or non-binary. And we're making movement now in a direction where we're reclaiming a lot of this knowledge and we're creating spaces for people to exist. But these transphobic and homophobic practices are so embedded in our way of life that it's dumbfounding. It's almost hard to sort of imagine this reality that we live in that's been so catered to the notion that everybody's cis, when that's so far from the truth. Oh, okay. Now I'm really going off on tangents because I get fiery talking about it, but yeah.
it's all good. No, this has been amazing to like hear your perspectives, like, and the organization's perspectives on all of this. honestly, I'm trying to like hold back tears about all the like especially all the success stories you've told. One, just since we're like kind of like approaching, well, I'm not approaching, we've already overrun, but hey, it's all in the good nature, and it's all with the purpose of raising lots and lots of money for you all. And I do see that the donation count has jumped up twice during this interview, so can't wait
Amazing.
to for our next for our like host to read those.
Yeah.
Just to like kind of like close this out, right? We've talked about, the past and present, right? What about the future, right? What about like future goals in community? What do you see in, the vision of community for like say maybe 2030, maybe like 10 years, or maybe let's go wild, right? Maybe 20, 30 years, right? What's your
Yeah.
long-term goal?
So, as an organization, we're moving into a new building in 2026. So, I feel like we've got our eyes set on that. And basically, right now, the physical space that we're in and the size of our team is not able to meet the capacity for what the demand for what people are asking for. Last year, we received 13,000 phone calls from people all across BC needing help. And so it's really our priority looking 10 years ahead is to just increase our capacity and make sure that we're showing up for the community. And I mean, ultimately, we're so dependent on gifts and donations, and we're really wanting to standardize the ways in which we're able to trust that we'll have funding set so that we can build capacity for the team. If I had to dream, I mean, I dream of a world in which policy and laws are in place to help safeguard and protect people in our communities. I dream of better healthcare systems to help support trans and non-binary people. I dream of a community here in Canada where we are no longer needed, where there are enough social services and social structures in place that if you're queer or trans, you are well supported by your government officials, by social services that exist, so that you don't need to go to a special safe house specifically for queer people. Um, I can't say this enough. It's like one of my favorite things about working in this job and working for this organization is that, oftentimes charities will fundraise to operationalize the space, like pay for rent and like pay for staff and wages. So many of the donations, like every single donation that we get, be it $20 or be it $500, it goes directly, very tangibly into supporting programs and services and supporting people that access our space. And the ceiling is so far high and we are so far from it that we're still very much in this tangible area of like every time someone makes a $20 donation, I can look them in the eye and say, you just bought art supplies for some of the kids. If someone gives $100, you just paid for 2 binders for youth in BC that weren't able to access it. And it just seems so, you can look at it from this micro level of like, it's just one person getting a binder. But like, how life-changing is that, even just on that scale? But then to be able to double that and like offer it to 2 kids who've never been able to feel affirmed, like that's impact that you're really able to make. And in all the jobs I've had, I've never been able to see that tangible impact happen. So anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm just so grateful for you and for this and for you organizing this. And I really hope that more people can do that looking to the future to help grow the organization and make sure that nobody gets left behind, like that we're able to sort of meet the demand from everyone. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mike. Is it okay if I call you Michael? Is that okay?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael. It has been amazing talking to you. We've got a marathon to go here. We've got lots and lots of runs coming up. Day one. We
Amazing.
got a Super Mario Odyssey speedrun actually coming up.
Oh, cool.
I
Right
guess in
on.
a way, this is like this marathon. Like I've just realized a parallel, but to like close out this entire like thought, right? I just kind of like realized a parallel between the event and like the entire community, and it's all about finding yourself. Because Speedromizer, I don't know if I talked about this in the email, but Speedromizer is about a speedrun marathon where you submit a game, but you don't run that game at the marathon. You get somebody else's speedrun, and you learn that over 90 days, right? So it's kind of like a parallel in that you're finding something new out about
Yeah,
yourself. And hey, maybe you find a new speedrun, and maybe you find a new identity in Q,
there you
right?
go.
So
Yeah, that's
there's
amazing.
this
No, I
little
love it. That's
parallel.
awesome. It's so great. Yeah. And I mean, like,
Yeah,
I'm a big advocate for people coming together to support people. So this is
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for talking. And I think, uh, unless you have any final words you want to say.
No, just a huge, massive thank you from literally everyone working here at Community. This means the world. So thank you so much.
You heard it blow up their bank account. We're gonna head back to the break skate. We're gonna go forward after the break with Super Mario Odyssey by Karasuma Okura. Looking really forward to that one as well. And I want to see that donation count on the bottom right rise. Give me $500,000 at the end of day one. I really hope we break 2 3K this event. Honestly, I know our goal is 1,500. I hope we break like 2 or 3K. Make it possible, everyone.
Oh
Please.
my god. That would be
Please.
incredible. That would be amazing. Oh my god.
Make it possible,
It's like
everyone.
every time I would run to the youth room and be like, oh my god, guys, we can do this now. No, that means a lot. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. All right, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.